We saw the Fellini film last Tuesday. It is not one of his best. It lacks a cohesive structure. You know, you get the feeling that he's not absolutely sure what it is he wants to say. Of course, I've always felt he was essentially a technical filmmaker. Granted, La Strada was a great film. Great in its use of negative imagery more than anything else. But that central cohesive core, you know, that must lead through an artist's work, leading from one to the other.
Screaming his opinions in my ear.
You understand what I'm talking about? Like all that Juliet of the Spirits or Satyricon. I found it incredibly indulgent. You know, he really is. He's one of the most indulgent filmmakers. He really is.
Keyword here
and
is indulgent.
Without getting, let's put it this way.
What are you depressed about?
I
missed my therapy. I overslept.
How can you possibly oversleep?
The alarm clock.
Do you know the hostile gesture that is to me?
I know, because of our sexual problem, right?
Everybody online at the New Yorker has to know our rate of intercourse.
It's like Samuel Beckett. You know, I admire the technique, but it doesn't hit me on a gut level.
I'd like to hit this guy on a gut level.
Stop it, Albie.
He's spitting on my neck. You know, he spits on my neck when he
talks. The most important thing of all.
And you know something else? You know, you're so egocentric that if I miss my therapy, you can only think of it in terms of how it affects you.
It's Weltanschauung is what it is.
Probably on their first date, right?
That
probably met by answering an ad in the New York Review of Books. 30-ish academic wishes to meet woman who's interested in Mozart, James Joyce, and sodomy. What do you mean, our sexual problem? I mean, I'm comparatively normal for a guy raised in Brooklyn.
Okay, I'm very sorry. My sexual problem. Okay, my sexual problem, huh?
I never read that. That was Henry James, right? Novel?
You know what it is?
Sequel to Turn of the Screw?
It's the influence of television. Yeah, now, Marshall McLuhan deals with it in terms of it being a high intensity, you understand? A hot medium.
What I wouldn't give for a large sock with horse manure in it.
Which he uses essentially
What do you do when you get stuck on a movie line with a guy like this behind you?
Wait a minute, why can't I give my opinion? It's a free country.
He can give you. You have to give it so loud. I mean, aren't you ashamed to pontificate like that? And the funny part of it is, Marshall McLuhan, you don't know anything about Marshall McLuhan's work.
Really? I happen to teach a class at Columbia called TV, Media, and Culture. So I think that my insights into Mr. McLuhan, well, have a great deal of validity.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Well, that's funny because I happen to have Mr. McLuhan right here. So yeah, just let me come over here a second.
Oh,
Tell him.
I heard what you were saying. You know nothing of my work. You mean my whole fallacy is wrong. How you ever got to teach a course in anything is totally amazing.
Boy, if life were only like this.
This is a brand new world of all-at-onceness.
Global Village is not created by the motor car or even by the airplane. It's created by instant electronic information movement. The Global Village is at once as wide as the planet and as small as a little town where everybody is maliciously engaged and poking his nose into everybody else's business. The Global Village is a world in which you don't necessarily have harmony. You have extreme concern with everybody else's business and much involvement in everybody else's life. It's a sort of Ann Landers column writ large. And it doesn't necessarily mean harmony and peace and quiet, but it does mean huge involvement in everybody else's affairs. And so the Global Village is as big as the planet and as small as the village post office.
You've been writing about the mass media for a good many years, and now you're an object of the mass media. How has this changed your view of it, if at all?
Let me instead explain why this has happened. Because, you see, suddenly, if you've noticed, the mood of North America has changed very drastically. Things like the safety car couldn't have happened 10 years ago.
Why is that?
Now, it's because people have suddenly become obsessed with consequences of things. They used to be obsessed with mere products and packages and launching these things out into markets and into the public. Now they've suddenly become concerned about what happens when these things go out on the highway. What happens when this kind of program gets on the air? They want safety air, safety cigarettes, safety cars, and safety programming. This need for safety is a sudden awareness that things have effects. Now, my writing has for years been concerned with the effects of things, not their impact, but their consequences after impact. TV, unlike the fantasy world, the escape world of the movies, TV creates enormously serious and realistic-minded sort of person well, almost oriental in his inward meditativeness. I think
This is the teenager of today.
Yes, he's becoming almost oriental in his inwardness.
He's so thoughtful and serious.
Yeah, grim. Whereas the movie generations of the 20s and 30s were a coon-coated bunch of superficial types, had a good time, and went to college, but not for knowledge and that sort of thing. All has changed.
And changed because of television, because
Very much. Television gave the old electric circuitry that is already here, gave it a huge extra push in this direction of involvement and inwardness. You see, the circuit doesn't just simply push things out for inspection. It pushes you in to the circuit. It involves you. When you put a new medium into a play in a given population, all their sensory life shifts a bit, sometimes shifts a lot. This changes their outlook, their attitudes, changes their feelings about studies, about school, about politics. Since TV, both Canadian and British and American politics have cooled off almost to the point of rigor mortis. Our politics require much more hotting up than the TV medium will give them. TV is ideal. You see, when you've got two experts like ourselves discussing TV, this is good TV because there's a process going on of mutual challenge, discovery, and processing. Now, TV is good for that, and same with ads. If the audience can become involved in the actual process of making the ad, then it's happy. It's like the old quiz shows. They were great TV because it gave the audience a role, something to do. They were horrified when they discovered they'd really been left out all the time because the shows are rigged. Now, this is a horrible misunderstanding of TV on the part of the programmers. But in the same way, most advertisers do not understand TV medium. Do you know that most people read ads about things they already own? They don't read things to buy them, but to feel reassured that they have already bought the right thing. In other words, they get huge information satisfaction from ads, far more than they do from the product itself. What we're advertising is heading is quite simply into a world where the ad will become a substitute for the product, and all the satisfactions will be derived informationally from the ad, and the product will be merely a number in some file somewhere. Instead of going out and buying a package book, of which there have been 5,000 copies printed, you will go to the telephone, describe your interests, your needs, your problems, and say, I'm working now on the history of Egyptian arithmetic, I know a bit of Sanskrit, I'm qualified in German, and I am a good mathematician. They said, it'll be right over. And they at once Xerox, with the help of computers from the libraries of the world, all the latest material just for you personally, not as something to be put out on the bookshelf. They send you the package as a direct personal service. This is where we're heading under electronic information conditions. Products increasingly are becoming services.
What kind of a world would you rather live in? Is there a period in the past or a possible period in the future you'd rather be in?
I'd rather be in any period at all, as long as people are going to leave it alone for a while. Just let go, just leave it now.
But they're not going to, are they?
No. So the only alternative is to understand everything that's going on and then neutralize it as much as possible, turn off as many buttons as you can, and frustrate them as much as you can. I am resolutely opposed to all innovation, all change, but I am determined to understand what's happening, because I don't choose just to sit and let the juggernaut roll over me. Now, many people seem to think that if you talk about something recent, you're in favor of it. The exact opposite is true in my case. Anything I talk about is almost certainly to be something I'm resolutely against. And it seems to me the best way of opposing it is to understand it, and then you know where to turn off the button.
Violence is essentially the form of the quest for identity.
I don't really go around punching that many guys in the nose, and I try to avoid getting punched in the nose.
The absolute indispensability of the artist is that he alone, in the encounter with the present, can give the pattern recognition.
You take for granted processes which I would consider Faustian, tragic, dramatic, apocalyptic, cataleptic.
Gone into orbit.
Tonight, a meeting of minds. Norman Mailer and Marshall McLuhan on two men of our time. Hate them or love them, but you must listen to what they say on tonight's meeting of minds. Here's Ken LaFoley, face to face with Norman Mailer and Marshall McLuhan.
Look, Marshall, we're both agreed that man's accelerating at an extraordinary rate into a super technological world, if you will.
Yeah.
And that the modes and methods by which men instruct themselves and are instructed are shifting at an extraordinary
We've gone into orbit.
Well, but at the same time, I would say there's something profoundly autoerotic about this process, and it's sinister. I think, for that reason.
Psychedelic. When you step up the environment to those speeds, you create the psychedelic thrill. The whole world becomes kaleidoscopic. And you go inward, by the way. It's an inner trip, not an outer trip.
Look, Marshall, from all this, you've said, among other things, that a novelist like Norman, who is preoccupied with sex and violence, is mid-Victorian for that reason. Now, what do you mean by that?
I didn't say this.
No, you said in that sense, I was essentially Victorian.
Centrally Victorian?
Essentially, I think it was.
Essentially? Well, what did you mean by that?
I
anyway?
don't...
Surely he's saying what you said.
Well, I doubt whether I said that, but anyway, what was the key to the Victorian period? It was the great triumph of the mechanical age, which is the age of fragmentation and specialism. But just at the peak of that mechanical triumph came the electric circuit, flooding in the whole electric image and world. In 1844, the first year of the commercial telegraph, Kierkegaard published a book called The Concept of Dread. He was quite aware that a new environment had formed around the old mechanical one. And whenever a new environment goes around an old one, there's always new terror. We live in a time when we have put a man-made satellite environment around the planet. The planet is no longer nature. It's no longer the external world. It's now the content of an artwork. The planet, nature has ceased to exist.
Well, I think you're anticipating a century, perhaps, but...
But when you put a man-made environment around the planet, you have, in a sense, abolished nature. Nature from now on has to be programmed.
Now, Marshall, I think you're begging a few tremendously serious questions. One of them is that we have not yet put a man-made environment around this planet totally. We've not abolished nature yet. We may be in the process of abolishing nature forever.
The environment is not visible. It's information. It's electronic.
Well, nonetheless, nature still exhibits manifestations which defy all methods of collecting information and data. For example, an earthquake may occur, or a tidal wave may come in, or a hurricane may strike, and the information will lag critically behind our ability to control it, because even though there may be all sorts of instruments which are warning us of the possibility of these things, finally man's environment is destroyed by nature.
The experience of that event, that disaster, is felt everywhere at once, under a single dateline.
But that's not the same thing as controlling nature, dominating nature.
No, just
superseding nature. It's far from that. I mean, nature still does exist as a protagonist on this planet.
Oh, yeah, but it's like our Victorian mechanical environment. It's a rearview mirror image. Every age creates as a utopian image, a nostalgic rearview mirror image of itself, which puts it thoroughly out of touch with the present. The present is the enemy. The present is and this will delight you, Norman, the present is only faced in any generation by the artist. The artist is prepared to study the present as his material because it is the area of challenge to the whole sensory life, and therefore it's anti-utopian. It's a world of anti-values, and the artist who comes in contact with the present produces an avant-garde image that is terrifying to the contemporaries.
I still come back to my particular point, which is that everything you say, I would go along and I would say it's true up to a particular point, which is, yes, man does resent his new environment, which comes always at the expense of
He fears it.
He fears it. He feels a certain claustrophobic relation to it.
Sense of total recoil.
Yes, but that doesn't mean that each new environment is thereby innocent. Some new environments are worse than other new environments.
Yes.
I'm not at all convinced that we're moving into anything that represents any attractive sort of evolution for man. I think we may be moving toward an apocalyptic end to man.
That
these successive environments that you speak of may just be the paroxysms of
an electronic world re-tribalizes man, yes.